All right. Today, just gonna share a few few files from the e/etc directory in most Linux distributions. Especially, we'll be working on Ubuntu Linux this morning. So generally, I'm gonna offend some people, but I tend to work a lot with either Red Hat based systems or Ubuntu based systems, or rather Debian. That would be dangerous. So yeah, Debian based systems, of which Ubuntu is one. So the Debian, a lot of them are very similar, but Debian based systems kind of have their own directory structure, and Red Hat deviates a little bit from that. But this will largely apply to most Linux distributions. So some of the files that affect the behavior of your system, of the users on your system, are these. So exci-resolve.conf is a file that lets you kind of trick DNS. So your browser could go to, if you're developing example.com and DNS points at host 1, you could, and you're developing on host 2, you could point for your local machine, point your own browser at host 2 with host 2's IP address. That way you could fully test the behavior of your site with SSL certificates and everything without modifying DNS. So I highly recommend understanding how to use the resolve.conf file. Now, why does it try files before DNS? Well, that is a result of your nsswitch file, nsswitch.conf. And I think I'll probably just hit on most of the files in your /etc directory today. So here in hosts, it tells the system to look at files, in other words, exci-resolve.conf, and then DNS. There's other backends for your NS switch. You could have LDAP and other things, like, for example, password could have files and then LDAP, and the same for group and shadow. Your users will be in the exci, and I say etc, I call it exci, as I've heard many people do the same. Exci pass WD, or exci password, as it's easier to say that. You'll have users, and I'm not showing you our real users, I'm just showing you the first 10, which many systems will have similar users as this. The super user, super cow powers admin user, is going to have a UID of 0 and a GID of 0. This here means basically, we're not using the password file to store our passwords. We are using exci shadow. We also, this is like the username field, or geckos. Here's your home directory and your default shell. So when you log in as root, you're going to get a bin bash shell, and it'll probably throw you in your home well, at least it'll try to look at .bashrc and .profile in your /root directory. Okay. These no logins are just going to return false, and in other words, they'll kick the user right out. They won't let anyone log in as bin. All right, well, enough of that. It's getting too deep. So you've got exci group. Notice here that Damon is part of group 1. That's his default group. This man is part of group 12. Exci group -4. I kind of looked at this file before now, so I know I just want to show the first 4 lines. So here you go. Here's the GID of the group. You could have multiple users be part of the group, the root group or any group, by putting them after this last colon: user, comma, user 2, comma, user 3. Aliases. Your mail handler will look in the exci aliases file for aliases in general. So say you have a user called mail, or let's say, look at the, say the root user, perfect example, of course. So if system mail internally to this machine is sent to root, who do you want that mail to forward to? Or even if you're listening externally and mail, or the root user gets, root at your system name directly, you have no MX probably for your direct host name, but you are listening on port 25. Who should I deliver the root mail to? Maybe that's a, sysadmins at yourdomain.com or something like that. Let's look at what that file looks like. Ooh. Okay. So we've got monet installed here, and it goes to root. Now, this could be :root. It could be :sysadmins at example.com. And then you can separate that with commas, I believe it is, to have it forward on to multiple people. And did we already look at exci hosts? Yeah, we did. No, did we? Let's see. Good grief. Scratch everything I said about resolve.conf. Resolve.conf is just showing you your name servers. I'm so sorry. So you could search local name server, against your router, or you could specify here, the Google public DNS servers or OpenDNS or anything here, and then you can specify some search domains. So if you typed in www into your browser, it would automatically append .sololabs.com, or at least it would search for that if it didn't find www. So back to hosts. This is where you would put your, your development hosts. I'm so sorry. So it's IP address and then host name. There's also your Debian version. You've got, in Red Hat or Red Hat variants, you might have something called like Red Hat release. You also might have something like, exci issue. Even though our Debian version's Jessie, we're on Ubuntu 14.04. We have, let's just look at, let's just look at what's in here that I've forgotten. app sources. Where you're going to look for your packages. In Red Hat, you're going to have like a Red Hat directory or a Yum directory with your Yum sources and your Yum package sources. You're going to have your basically, exci, if you haven't figured this out, and you probably knew this, is your config files. So sshd.conf. This is where your main SSH server config is going to be. Your init.d is for your startup scripts. Oops. Your RC, most of your, I guess you call this like a System 5 startup, basically startup scripts. You got RC 0 through 5. This is your startup levels. Usually a server is going to use init level 3. So these are the ones that are going to apply, generally speaking. Starting these things, you're got, let's see, scale. Your scale is going to be copied over to any new user. This stuff is going to get copied to when you create new users. Anyways, that's kind of some default files. Oh, one more thing. In Debian, you'll have like exci network interfaces, and you might specify in here a static interface, and everybody's doing the .d thing now and doing includes and all that. I'm using just DHCP here on this EC2 host, but you might give it a static IP address. In Red Hat, it's going to store this stuff in another place. Let's see, sysconfig network-scripts, I think it is. And that's kind of how things get bootstrapped using the exci directory. A lot of installation, a lot of like the packages where you just download the zip file and unpackage it and all that, may put it in like /usr/local/etc or some other place. But typically, if you're going to install from using your package manager, it's likely going to use the /etc area. Oh, enough of this. Join us tomorrow for some more interesting tidbits. We're going to have some more guests on next week, both Travis and Benjamin Kovach. Look forward to hearing from them. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian.